Hey guys, it's Mario from the WATL, and today I'm going to teach you guys how to properly stick an axe when you have a flat blade on it. And what I mean by it is a flat blade is one that doesn't have any curves, similar to the Commander that's coming out actually this week, and the Butcher or the Corporal. So these are all axes that are completely flat bladed. So the thing with these axes is there's an inverse correlation between aim and force. What I mean by that is the more force you use, the less your aim goes down. So again, it's no different than you kicking a soccer ball as hard as you can. If you kick it as hard as you can, I promise you will not be able to aim as accurately if you dial it down a little bit. No different than a golf swing. The harder you try swinging the club and the harder you try nailing it, the less aim you will have. And that holds true for axe throwing as well. So there is that inverse correlation between force and aim. The reason I'm telling you that is because you need, in order to land an axe perfectly flat, you actually need more force. Because the physics behind it is when you're landing, when you have a curved axe, and let's say you have a nice, smooth, simple throw, you don't use force, a curved axe would make a lot more sense for your type of throw. The physics of it is, when you land flat, that force is distributed across 4 inches of the blade. So that means you need more force in order to actually penetrate the wood. It doesn't matter if it's pine, if it's cottonwood, or if it's poplar, you're gonna have the same issue across the board, and it all depends on your aim. So the trick is, when you're having problems sticking the axe and you're trying to land it flat, take a half a step back or try nailing it so it's tip in first. The key to all of these axes, whether it's the Commander or the Butcher, is that you actually get more coverage when it goes tip in, and I'm going to show you how. So this is an example that I wanted to show you specifically with the Butcher. The blade generally comes around 4 inches, and I say generally 4 inches because we have to go slightly below it just so it is compliant. And because these are manually handmade and they're done by hand and they're profiled by hand, there is going to be a little bit of variance. So it might be 3.9 inches, 3.95 inches, 3.8, 3.85 inches. But the idea is it doesn't matter if it's under it, because the key to it is the coverage that you get when it's at an angle. Look at that coverage from the blade. It's almost 4.5 inches from the very top to the bottom. The key to these axes isn't landing it perfectly flat where you get exactly 4 inches. You do it tip in, it goes in at an angle, and that's where you get slightly more than the 4 inches. It's just the way the math works. So if you look at the blade, and I'm going to use this ruler as an example just to show you, if you're looking at the blade, yes, it's slightly under 4 inches, but if I curve it, look how much bigger it goes in when it goes tip in. So you're now starting to get closer and closer to the 4.5 inch boards. And you see, as the more I angle it through, you can even get up to 5 inches of coverage if you land it perfectly at that angle. It's not always going to be perfect, but the idea is that you're always trying to go tip in and you're trying to angle it to maximize. This is a perfect blade to maximize it. The thing with these axes is, and what people don't realize is, when you have an advantage, whether it's a soccer shoe that allows you to aim better or makes you curve the ball better, or if you have maybe a basketball that helps you spin easier so the ball goes in much easier and it rolls into the rim, this is the perfect advantage that you want to take advantage of. You don't want to necessarily land flat. You need to understand how the axe works and how you get the maximum coverage, and that's by landing tip in. So I'm going to show you some quick examples of how I've adjusted my throw in order for it to land tip in so it's not always flat, so I always get that maximum coverage. So stock, out of the box, you get a 17-inch handle from the Butcher. All of the axes, all the Gen 2 axes coming out that, this year and in 2021 will all come with a standard 17-inch handle, so then you can have more variability to be able to cut it down further to meet your throw. With the 17-inch handle, the way I throw with this handle, and if I go my standard throw, it generally lands perfectly flat. And we'll see it after, you'll see it's a perfectly flat axe. I didn't want that, and I didn't like it because, again, because I am I consider myself a very light thrower, I don't want to land flat. I want to land at an angle. So what I did is I had a 16-inch handle made, and if I aim up, you'll notice that it'll over-rotate a bit more, which gives me a bit more safety. So here's a perfect example of how you can either cut the handle or you can step back. Here, yes, I have the full 4 inches coverage. Here, I over-rotated it, but again, I'm not going to have any drops. Ideally, my rotation, even though I nailed the kill shot, my rotation actually should be more something like this at an angle, where I am in the tip, but I am slightly at an angle and I'm not flat like I'm showing with a 17-inch handle. So my preference, even though this one landed flat, my preference will always be to land tip in, so I never have any drops in any sort of matches, and I'm actually maximizing the coverage of the butcher. The competition axe that I'm using right now is the Commander axe. So this is what I'm going to be using for the World Championship. This is the only axe that I actually use for any sort of league play. I like it for me because it's a much heavier head. It's similar to the Corporal, but it has that 16-inch handle as well, where I actually have to, I reduce the strength that I need in order to throw. I lob it, let it throw, and it actually lands at a much better angle than it normally would with the butcher. So I moved away from the butcher. I decided to lighten up my throw, let the weight of the axe do all the work, and it penetrates in, again, not flat. I want it at an angle. The same thing for the Corporal. Corporal has the exact same mechanics where it's a nice heavier axe, shorter handle, and it allows me to penetrate tip in. So again, if you look at these axes, the Corporal is actually the perfect throw that you want to get. You'll see on this side that I got a tip in, I got it at the angle, and I'm actually maximizing the full blade. Not because I'm landing flat, but because I landed at an angle. And the same thing with the Commander. The Commander landed at the perfect angle of what I want, where it went in tip first, and then I maximize the coverage at the very bottom. So these are two examples of how you should be really throwing these flat-bladed axes. Not to land flat where it bounces off the board because maybe you're not throwing hard enough, but also it allows you to land tip in, which maximizes the coverage of all the blades, which come at 4 inches across the board, but it also allows you to make sure that you're not getting those drops. Hope this helps. Thanks very much, guys. Happy throwing.